So buying a home on the water can be one of the most rewarding real estate and vacation home investments that you can ever expect to make. Potential financial upside notwithstanding, but purchasing a waterfront home can help provide you with serenity, incredible views, and often recreational activities for your entire family right in your backyard. So what is a waterfront property ultimately worth to you and your family? What type of waterfront property suits your desired lifestyle? And what questions do you need to ask or want to ask when you're buying waterfront real estate? So these are all valid questions to consider when buying a waterfront home. Hi there, I'm Diane Harris, and as a realtor and lifestyle specialist in Naples, Southwest Florida, we are going to walk through the pros and cons of waterfront property and offer you some tips about purchasing that perfect little slice of paradise on the water. So here in Naples, Southwest Florida, there are an incredible variety of waterfront properties to choose from. But the definition is the same. A waterfront property is defined as a lot parcel which includes direct access to a body of water, and that means it must be accessible within the property lines. That could be anything from a direct Gulf access home or something that's on a canal in Port Royal, Aqua Lane, or Royal Harbor, to a home on a lake that is a pretty retention pond with a beautiful fountain in the back. So what are some of the pros and cons of waterfront living? Well, if you've ever sat on a beach or stayed in a waterfront home, it's like a near medicinal effect, right? Just hearing those waves lapping up against the shore. Other positives about buying waterfront homes include a strong potential for appreciation. So waterfront properties are typically those that see the highest appreciation. So whether purchasing a Gulf property or a home with a lovely long lake view, a home with a permanent water view is going to have more potential for appreciation and more value than a home that's possibly looking at a preserve. So waterfront homes also have solid investment potential. When now we're seeing so many Airbnbs and self-rental environments, homes with water tend to have a higher rentability and be able to garner higher rents than homes without water access or all of the activities that come along with being on a waterfront property. So what are the cons of buying a waterfront home? Well, there's extra costs to consider. A waterfront home it's about the dirt itself. It's the lot you buy. The more prime the location, the more you're going to pay. So cost isn't the only downside of buying a waterfront property. There are other potential pitfalls, some of which you might not really be aware of until it's too late. So for example, lots of added regulations. Many new waterfront homeowners don't realize that they're going to be subject to specific rules. And it really is depending on your area. And there may be a coastal commissioner or other organization that may restrict what you can or cannot do in terms of construction, increasing the size of the home, dock space, deck space, etc. And there's also less privacy. So waterfront homes are sometimes in areas that attract a lot of visitors. So say, as we all know, we cruise around through Aqua Lane, Royal Harbor, Port Royal. Those homes tend to have a little less privacy than others because we're peering into their backyards, which is what makes them so fun, right? Often, waterfront properties extend to the mean high water mark. So during low tide, your beach could actually be considered public property, as it is here in Collier County. And that's open to boaters, walkers, and anybody who wants to meander by, for instance. You also have to concern yourself with climate change a little bit. There's growing concern about the potential impact of rising water levels on waterfront communities. And so it's something to consider. Bodies of water also naturally shift due to tidal action. And that's, rain or snowfall up north, but tidal action down here. And that can change the landscape of your property and increase your flood risk. Another thing that people have to consider is homeowners insurance. For waterfront properties, it can be more expensive, and it all depends on the type of water you live on. A lake is very different than living on the beach or on a canal. And for some people, for example, a lakefront home 15 miles inland is not going to have the same insurance premiums as a home that's on a canal with direct water access here in Florida. So another con can be flood insurance. So waterfront homeowners in some areas must carry flood insurance, which can be expensive, and sometimes it may not be available in that area at all. And so as you know, we've had a lot of changes in our flood insurance policies here in Florida. So if your lender requires insurance and you're unable to obtain coverage from an insurance carrier, your mortgage application is going to be rejected or denied. So when shopping for flood insurance, understand what the policy actually covers. It's always a good idea to see if the home seller has a current flood insurance policy that can be rewritten for the new homeowner. That's going to save you the most money. And so regarding repairs on waterfront property, some waterfront homes might need a special exterior finish to protect against salt and sand damage, as well as stormproofing. And that can be impact windows, hurricane shutters, a variety of different things that'll help protect you against a storm. And those can be pricey, but they're also a protective measure. So should the waterfront area experience a bad storm, there may also be needs for repairs and, again, tackling your insurance with that. So let's talk about some tips for buying a waterfront home. There are a few additional factors to weigh when you're considering purchasing a waterfront home that aren't really an issue when you're in a place that is landlocked, essentially. Location is important regardless of where you buy, but it becomes more specific when you're searching for waterfront property. So for example, some boaters are interested in deep water fishing, while others love offshore or small game fishing near their home, or just cruising around going to waterfront restaurants, which who doesn't love that, right? So therefore, the distance to the channel and the length of the cruise to your destination is something that's very important to consider. So take into account the speed limits as well. So for example, here in Naples, if your home's on Aqualane Shores on a canal, when you come out to the channel, you may have a further distance to go in minimum wake before you can pick up speed and get where you want to go faster. And when you're in Royal Harbor, you're closer to that max speed area. So it takes less time for you and you're spending less time in minimum wake, making it a lot faster to get your ultimate destination. And size matters. Don't let anybody tell you differently. That is the size of your boat I'm talking about. Don't go down that other path. But direct access means there are no bridges between the property and the Gulf or ocean. Indirect access means that boaters are restricted by bridge height on the way to the Gulf or ocean. And that really needs to be taken into consideration. So other considerations to think about, if you're buying a home on a barrier island, for example, you'll need to consider an evacuation plan and how you'll maintain a generator and have sufficient fuel. And also remember that the purchase price of waterfront property is really only the beginning. You need to make sure you do your research, check your homeowner's insurance costs, your homeowner's association, if that's applicable, and if the property is in a flood zone, that's going to add to your expense. Special maintenance that's necessary for waterfront homes also include things like your dock, your decking, and your seawall maintenance. That should all be accounted for because you're going to need to do things over time to each one of those. You also want to take into account your furniture, right? I mean, we ladies, let's make sure we have money for all the fun stuff. The furniture, the jet skis, the paddle boards, the kayaks, and your boats. What kind of boat do you want? And finally, consider how much you're willing to pay for the privilege of being on the water. So as the old saying goes, they aren't making any more waterfront property, well, these days anyway. And so if it's a second home, consider the cost of a caretaker in the absence during extended periods that they're going to need to come back through and check on your home. So thanks for joining me today. I hope that these pros and cons about waterfront property and tips on purchasing waterfront homes were helpful. If you enjoyed it, click on subscribe below for my YouTube channel. And if you have just questions about real estate in general or our amazing lifestyle down here in Naples and Southwest Florida, reach out, connect with me, and I hope to help you love the way you live, Naples.